Hi, so I'm Ethan Helfrich. I'm the person behind Black Brunswicker. I originally started playing music in 2014 under the name Rusty Sleeping Giant, but around 2019 I put an end to that project and I started doing Black Brunswicker, and I've been doing it ever since. I was born in Bloomington, Indiana, and raised just outside of there in a small town called Michol. There's really not a whole lot to say about Michol. It's pretty tiny with just about 4,000 people and really isn't known for a whole lot aside from the astronaut Gus Grissom, who was born there, and he sadly died in the Apollo 1 accident. It's a pretty small place, and I think kind of having that experience of growing up somewhere kind of rural and with not a whole lot going on, I tended to daydream a lot and really got into exploring and travel. And I think that has really followed through in my music and my creativity. I tend to, find a lot of inspiration from that daydreaming and from travel and from, kind of a sense of wanderlust. I didn't really grow up in a very musical family. My family didn't listen to music a lot when I was growing up. So it wasn't until I was 13 when I started playing saxophone in my school's band. And later I got into jazz band and jazz sax and really enjoyed that for a while. But it wasn't until I was around 18 or 19 when I started getting into guitar playing. Started with metalcore and then later started moving into death metal and black metal as I got older. I started some pretty gnarly sounding black metal projects, and I mean, to be quite honest, they sounded a bit shit. From that experience, though, I think I learned a lot about kind of the whole DIY way of producing music, from recording to mixing to doing the artwork to creating visuals and media and things like that. And I think one of the big through lines of my music has always been that kind of DIY element that, I think I picked up from metal. It wasn't until I was a little bit older when I started getting more into things like post rock and ambient music, and then that's really kind of when I started to see myself experiment more with pedals and delay and different kinds of sounds. And, around that time, I think I started to form kind of an early sound for myself that you kind of see later develop and grow as I start Rusty Sleeping Giant and then eventually Black Brunswicker. People are probably going to get real mad when they see me do this. I'm a big history nerd. My undergraduate degree was in history, so I've spent a lot of time reading history books and watching history docs. And a lot of people tend to think that the name Black Brunswicker comes from the John Everett Millay painting, but I actually took the name from the military unit that Millay also took inspiration from, which was a Germanic military unit that was raised to fight off the French occupation. And I've always had a fascination with, I don't know, just their general look, the aesthetic, the uniform. You can see that, in the John Millay painting, that stark black uniform. And so I think that kind of image and kind of the romantic story of the Black Brunswicker, just really interested me. The initial idea behind Black Brunswicker was that I wanted to create ambient music that sounded like chopped up tape loops from the 1960s, hazy, warbly, very noisy. I also really wanted to put the acoustic guitar at the forefront of what I was doing. And it wasn't until later when I got into American primitive guitar that I really knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to create finger-picked guitar that was washed out in a sea of reverb and delay. One of the most common questions I get about my music is, what synths do I use? And the answer is, I don't use any. It's all just guitar, mainly acoustic guitar, but sometimes electric as well. And really what the bulk of it is just guitar processed through a lot of delay and reverb, as well as heavy usage of a volume pedal. I've always been a big pedal nerd, ever since I started getting into black metal. Bands like Wolves in the Throne Room were really influential in getting me into delay and reverb pedals, as well as distortions. A lot of times I think I oscillate between a minimalist approach and a maximalist approach. I like setting creative constraints on myself to just use as few pedals as I can sometimes, but then other times I'll go into stacking multiple delays. I think a big part of doing music for me is just experimenting with my sound and seeing what kind of weird and wild soundscapes I can create. Tape is a big part of what I do as Black Brunswicker. All of my early albums up to 2020's While Their Paths was all recorded to tape. I got really into tape after discovering Grouper's music, and I just really loved the way that she used tape and tape loops to create wonderful soundscapes. I really like the physicality of tape. I like just having a physical object to work with. I like something physical that I can manipulate. And also there's like the sound aspect of it as well. I really like the noise you get from it, a little bit of the unpredictability that might come with working with tape. It's really a different beast entirely, and at times it can be frustrating, but I think it's very rewarding to work with tape. So I think a big source of inspiration for my music comes from nature, and it comes from sceneries that I've seen on travels. I think a big part of my artistic creativity is travel, and it is taking in new sceneries and landscapes. So a lot of the music that I put out in the past has been directly inspired by trips that I've been on. I think having that connection to nature, to trees, to grass, to streams and things like that, it's very important for me. Growing up in a rural area, I was surrounded by that. I really wouldn't call myself like the most outdoorsy person, but I really am usually at my best when I have some sort of connection with nature. I'm able to spend some time outside. My wife and I moved to Manchester in fall 2020 so that she could do a master's here. And, it was during the middle of the pandemic, and at that time, it seemed like things were maybe a little bit better here in the UK, so we just decided to take the risk and move over here. We didn't have any friends, we didn't have any family here, so when the lockdowns came about, it really took a toll on us because we were stuck in our tiny flat, we weren't able to get out, we weren't able to meet anyone, and yeah, just that being stuck in a new place without any connections or friends or family, it really took a toll on our mental health. It took me a long time to be able to work through things and to understand kind of what I was feeling was depression and social anxiety. And really during 2021 and 2022 was when I was kind of at the lowest point, really. I was seeing a therapist, I was on meds, but really just nothing for me seemed to work. It was through a process of self-discovery where I started reflecting on myself and on my life and experiences more. And one of the things that came out of that was a lot of unresolved issues around gender. Masculinity and manhood were always something that I struggled with, and it took me a long time to work through those feelings and to be able to kind of confront what I was feeling on the inside and kind of what I repressed for so many years. And kind of what I came through this process of self-discovery was that, I don't necessarily feel that the term like man or masculine is something that applies to myself. And what I've come to accept is, myself as a feminine person, as a trans non-binary person, and it's been a struggle to get to that point of self-acceptance, but I am slowly on the road to that point. When I moved to Manchester, I had to start over in a lot of ways. We were in a new city, in a new country, so we had to start over completely from scratch. And before I moved here, I ended up selling off most of my musical equipment. You know, I had a lot of guitars and amps and pedals and recording equipment. And I sold most of that stuff off because, you know, moving across the world is very expensive. You know, there's visa fees and application fees and all kinds of things that you have to pay for. And the bills really started to rack up, so I ended up selling off a bunch of guitars, pedals, amps, things like that. And what I came over here with was just one guitar, a couple pedals, and just really the bare minimum of recording equipment. So when I sold most of my gear, I still wanted to do music. I mean, it's a big part of who I am. Without music, I oftentimes struggle to understand my emotions and my feelings. Throughout my life, I've oftentimes had difficulty understanding and expressing, you know, what I'm feeling on the inside. And music's always served a good role for me in understanding those complex emotions that I'm feeling. You know, oftentimes I'll go to the guitar when I'm feeling a certain way and work through my feelings as I play. And I think it's been very therapeutic for me to do that as a way of understanding myself and understanding my emotions. I think that experience of starting over in a way was, yes, challenging, but also I think a good thing for me because I kind of had to reinvent myself. It wasn't until we started to move out from the city into Altrincham, where we're at now, into a house where I have a creative space. I have a studio for my music, and I think that for me is the core of like what home is. It's having a space where I feel safe and comfortable in to create and to be myself, and I feel really fortunate that I have that space that I do right now. Honestly, like what I tell myself, like, don't be so fucking hard on yourself, like don't be so fucking sad, and just be open to people, be open to new experiences and things like that, and just try to see the good in things. And yeah, I think that's what I would tell myself. So as lockdowns lifted, I started attending a lot of open mics in Manchester. Since I was living in the city, it was very easy to get around and go to a lot of open mics every week. The lovely thing about Manchester is almost every night you're in town, there's always going to be music going on at multiple different venues all across the city. So I think going to those open mics and meeting people, I really started to form some connections here and really integrated into the Manchester music community. You know, previously I really had not played out live all that much as Black Brunswicker, so it was a pretty new experience for me getting my footing and figuring out a live set that works for me. And it's worked out really well so far at a lot of different venues like the Art of Tea, Eagle Inn, Grafton Arms, and Whiskey Jar. I've met a lot of friends, including Tom Welsh. Him and I joined up together as Old Sun New Moon, where I get to do a lot of my ambient work, but with a singer-songwriter who's, you know, singing and adding some lyrics above, you know, my ambient guitar wash. was approached by Brady Kendall of Alaskan Tapes, and you know, he and I had known of each other there over the years, but you know, we never really spoke, although we'd both listened to each other's music. And you know, he had recently gotten signed onto Nettwerk and started doing A&R for them, and he approached me. We just started to chat, and kind of from there, things really started to snowball, and you know, I got an offer to sign on to Nettwerk. Getting signed was, I think, a really big and life-changing experience for me. You know, 2023 was really a wash for me, honestly. It was a tough year still, but you know, getting signed by Nettwerk, getting approached by them, and partnering with them, it really kick-started my interest again in the project, and really got me excited to write music again. And that's what eventually led to my most recent EP, A Moment of Clarity. Just wrapped up a new album, so it's going to be a 10-track album, and this is going to be a first for me. It's the first time I've included collaborators in on my solo music. You know, I've never really collaborated with anybody on Black Brunswicker music, and so I've been really excited to involve a lot of the friends and community that I've met here in Manchester. So I've got a spoken word poem from Heidi Dewhirst. I've got some beautiful vocal loops from Mercer. I've got some trumpet from my friend Joel Harries, and then Tom Welsh from Old Sun New Moon is also going to be adding some bass and baritone guitar on there. I'm really excited to dive into this new version of Black Brunswicker, you know, one that's a bit more collaborative, and one that's, you know, including their friends along the way. I'm really looking forward to like the future of Black Brunswicker. I have a wonderful music community here in Manchester. I've made so many great connections and friends here, and I'm really excited for this new collaborative effort that I'm doing to, you know, involve my friends in this process. I do like to think that like I try to kind of try new things and to experiment with my sound, and this whole process of collaborating with others has just been a really wonderful experience for me, and I'm really looking forward to sharing this new music with everyone. That was awesome! Fucking A! Can we give it a round of applause to my wife?
The hostess with the mostess.
Yeah.